police department.
Okay,
Well, you put honorable.
I did.
I got it.
Are you trying to impress us, are you?
We ready to go, Adam? Okay, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I think you're the notes person tonight.
He's taking
You gonna take notes?
the whole notebook.
Somebody needs to take notes. Okay, that means you get to take roll too.
There's a whole bucket.
Okay, President Scott Meyer,
Here,
Vice President Amy Lawson,
Here.
vacant seat.
here.
Ed Brand. Here. Myself, Hart Sumar, Tony May. Melissa Glazier, Adam Zaklakowski. Alex Entermill.
All right, we have a quorum.
We have a quorum.
Approve the meeting agenda. Do we have to still approve it even though there's no changes to it? Alex?
If there aren't any changes, you can say, you can move right around, or you can take it by
Okay.
consensus, it's approved.
Move right on. Consider approving the minutes of the July 20 meeting.
Make a motion that we approve the 7/20/23 minutes as written.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion carries. We have no old business, new business. Consider selecting a secretary among the RDC members.
I can't even spell my name.
Well, it's gonna have to be one of you. Cause I can't do it.
I,
Just make it me if it's fine. I'll move on.
Okay.
I'll
Do we have to nominate and vote?
nominate Hart to be secretary.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, sir.
Yay.
Next, consider a request from Chief Patrick Bratton for $44,792.10 to cover the cost of new AEDs for all existing police vehicles. Sir?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Reason I'm coming to you today is our AEDs that we currently have are 10 years old. We had purchased them through funds donated by community members, and our AEDs are no longer up to date and are at the end of their life cycle. That being said, we're trying to stay in standard with the same AEDs, automatic external defibrillators that the fire department uses. That way there's cross training. If a fire department member has to grab one of ours or we have to grab one of theirs, we all know how to use it, what's expected, things like that. And then we can additionally do training with the fire department when they have their annual recertifications for that too. Kylie Culbertson, I asked her to be here, but she said it depended on the ribbon cutting ceremony in McCoursville. That way, if there was any questions about the actual defibrillator and the use, she would be able to explain that since she's used them, but they were still running a little behind on that. So any technical questions, I've sent over the data sheets, things like that. That's all I can refer to as of now. I mean, I could quote what I've already given you, but as far as use, Kylie was going to be my residential expert to come in to talk about that, but she couldn't make it.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
The invoice we have right here is for 2488. Minutes say 44,000. Is it this 2,400 multiplied by however many you're gonna get?
Correct. 2488.45 to the sum of 18 vehicles is what we have. One will go in each car, totaling 44,792.10, if my math was correct. and their invoice or their quote, not invoice, but their quote was correct.
Can I make a motion?
Sure.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Chief Bratton's request as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Yes. I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Over the past, we've had those old AEDs, 6, 8 years,
It was a little over 9 now,
9,
almost 10.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
How many of the electrode pads have you gone through in those 9 years? Any idea?
I don't know. Because when we take the calls as listed down in my request, I put history and data. We had taken 184 calls since January, and then 537 total medical calls. We assisted the fire department, or it was a medical or an overdose or a coded person, heart attack, something where they weren't breathing, responding. We don't track when we use an AED. Because normally we'll get there, hook on our AED, because we would get there before the fire department, because before they came full time, we'd hook on our AED, and then they would just take the patient with our AED and roll with it when they went to the hospital. So I don't have exact numbers on tracking of how many pads have been used. So I apologize on that.
Well, that's all good. What I'm getting at is, would we as a group be interested in buying some additional replacement pads, electrode pads, just so they have a supply on hand?
Do they go bad? Is there a shelf life?
There is a shelf life. It's usually 2 years. That, and then the batteries are generally a 3-year shelf life. Working with the fire department, if our pads start to get aged, speaking with Kylie, she said that we can give them our older pads because they're more likely to use them quicker, and then they could replace them with the newer pads. But this does not leave us any extra pads. That just comes with the basic AED, the battery, 1 set of adult pads, and 1 set of children pads.
What's the delivery time on this order if you placed it tomorrow?
She said they're about 6 weeks out.
Then yeah, I would agree with that.
So when you order these, you'll have to order some pads, right?
The quote of the 2488.45, it comes with the Life Pack 1000, 1 set of adult pads, 1 set of children's pads, and the battery. So that's a 2-year shelf life on the pads and 3 years generally on the battery.
Chief, is there value in us ordering an extra 5 sets for another $765?
That would be, I was trying to get by with the minimal I could, since I was coming and begging for money. I was just trying to get us by and what we would use.
Things that you actually need versus like what is helpful for
Okay.
you, and what will you actually use, and what do you need?
So I would say currently this year alone, we've probably used, it's August, we've probably used 5 to 6 sets of pads. And that's my best guess from hearing, because I know Chris King, he's earned 2 life-saving awards this year with CPR and AED and things like that. So I would estimate, if it's a current trend, we're going to usually use 8 to 10 sets of pads a year, depending on whether they're adult or child. We use much more adult pads than we do child pads. The childs, I think maybe if we had a couple spares on hand, that way, if it does get used, that officer has that ability to come into our quartermaster, grab a spare set. The adult pads, if we had an extra, maybe 10 sets of pads, we could definitely get by very well with that and be much appreciated.
I'm just thinking, if you don't use the child pads very often, is that something that you would rotate out with the fire department?
Yes.
Is there as big of a need for those if they're not used frequently? Or to have extras would be my point.
Maybe a couple spare sets, just in case something were to happen. I can remember offhand in the past 10 years that we've had them, we've probably used them on children maybe 3 or 4 times in the 9 to 10 years.
Yeah, Chief, I don't, obviously I don't speak for everybody, but I don't consider this begging for money. I would never want to be one of you guys on a call that has to pull out an AED on a child. So it's money, but
Sure.
I mean, this is the point of this. So would you guys be open to a friendly amendment and just giving him a budget for this? And then he can use that for. Alex, could we do that?
Is that okay?
Could we appropriate money for a certain amount for him to spend as he needs? That make it easier, and then he can use it. You like that?
Yeah, so long as it's going towards this emergency response equivalent, yes.
All right, then I will present a friendly amendment to,
Question.
yeah.
Do we want to, how long does he have to use that money then?
That's what I was gonna put in my amendment.
Because I was thinking too, like if the batteries are only good for 2 years, do we want to wait and you can come back in 2 years and ask for batteries? Or do we want to allow money for that or what?
Eventually, I plan on, not this year, we've started the budget cycle and the budgeting for this year. In 2024 to 2025, I want to start building an AED budget, a line item in there.
Okay.
So that we will have that continual funding. So it won't be a one-time lump sum from the community or a one-time lump sum from the RDC. It will be built into the budget so I can replace or add as needed because obviously with the growth in the town, the community, we're going to have to add more officers in the upcoming years, which means more AEDs, more vehicles, things like that.
Sure.
So I'm going to eventually build that into my budget cycle of 2024, 2025.
So if we give him a set dollar amount, which Hart's prepared to amend his motion, amend his motion, not his motion. Then he can use that, the chief can use that
However.
for all this equipment, however he wants.
Okay.
And then in a couple of years, if you need some batteries, and we're still here and we have any money left,
Sure.
we can consider it again.
How much is the battery, like a battery?
So then I'll amend my motion to earmark $50,000 towards the police department's use of life pack AED equipment and the associated material for use by December 31st. So this calendar year.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? And I will abstain because I'm a police commissioner. Cool. Motion carries. Congratulations, Chief.
Thank you all.
Sorry, was it 50,000
50,000
till the end of the year?
All right, next on the agenda, consider authorizing 16,000.
The same important record, I'm going to use that.
And get them ordered as quickly as possible, because currently we have a couple cars that don't have them in it. So I am going to use that as fast as I can get it, so.
Oh,
Yeah.
We'll have to wait for the end of the year.
Well, there's some shipping money in there for you too.
and Chief, just so
Sure.
you understand, the procedure here is once you receive an invoice from
Uh-huh.
them, before Missy pays it,
Mhm.
get it to me and I'll
Okay.
put it on their agenda and then they sign off on it and then I give it to Missy.
Perfect. We'll get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Item C, to consider authorizing $16,923 for ChargePoint Electric Vehicle Charging Station for public use at the town's public parking between Main and Merrill, south of the railroad track.
All right, so for this particular item, this came about, I want to say probably last year. Councilman Holland at the time had spoken with me about doing an electric charger station in the town's public parking lot off of Main Street. There was at least the Starretts, I think, from FAI at the time were liked that idea as well. I'm sure others may feel the same way or against it. And so obviously we had a lot of other priorities going on, but we finally realized, hey, let's contact some companies and get some quotes and then see if the RDC wants to make it a priority or not. So I had reached out to this company, EV United. They do this brand called ChargePoint. It's the exact same brand that is in the city of Greenfield's public parking lot. In fact, there's an actual picture of it in your packet. And they provided us with the quote that's before you tonight. We also reached out to Duke Energy to see if they did that as well. We went back and forth, and we had a rep, and we lost the rep, and they never ended up giving us a quote. And then there was another company, kind of a startup company, as I understood it, that is supposedly doing some work at Hale Industries building over here. But he had indicated to me that he didn't provide a quote, but he said I think we were looking for 10 to 15,000, seemed to be kind of the ballpark range at the time. And he said, based on our technology, what we would offer would be a lot more expensive than that. So that's how we kind of arrived at this. Other than that, the only other concerns that I heard from some folks, I know Council President Fence was concerned about how much parking might be lost in the lot for this. And the thought process was just to emulate Greenfield and have 2 parking spaces. In fact, I also realized that as you pull into the parking lot off of Main Street, we could restripe one of the spaces right near the fire hydrant that's over there and turn that into an ADA aisle as opposed to just a no man's land. So I think we could probably gain 1 additional space by playing around with some of the striping as you pull in. And that means we'd probably just have a net loss of 1. Lastly, I know Joe Renner, the town manager, has talked about possibly paving that lot at some point and maybe doing curbs in the lot. And I think he's thinking about different options. One last thing on the charger station is I don't think there's any real particular preference if you're inclined to do it, where to put it exactly. I think that's flexible. The one thing that was brought up is it might make sense to have it as you pull in off of Main Street and have it up near the old Camera Dentistry building that's there. Because if it's on the north side of the parking lot, there's a little bit of ambiguity as to where the railroad right-of-way starts and where the town's property is. And I remember we ran into some issue with that in the past. So we don't want to have a situation where we put these things in the railroad right-of-way and it becomes an issue. So that's about it for that particular item. We do have a representative on the line on Zoom, Katie Maller, who can answer any technical questions you may have. I think she's on the line.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm over call right now. I was out doing a commissioning on the field late this evening, so just calling in right now.
Okay. Did you have anything to add? What was her name? Katie, did you have anything to add or did you hear all of Adam's presentation?
No, I think
You ready for a motion?
Well,
it seems like a pretty straightforward level 2 EV charging project. I don't believe I have anything else. Unless you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
okay. I think that since our agenda came out, I've had a surprising number of phone calls of concerns about parking spaces on that, in that one particular area being the prime spot for a lot of parking. But I'll defer to my other members here for discussion, or if there's an opinion formed, I don't know.
Let me just interject with one bit of information too. We haven't decided yet, and we haven't talked about who would pay for the charge, if the user pays for it, or if some of it is subsidized by the town or paid for entirely by the town. From what I remember, there are a variety of different ways you can do it. My default would probably be to just do it however they did it in Greenfield, would probably be the same way that we do it here unless otherwise. I don't know how they do it in Greenfield. And I don't know much about the fees that the user pays or the government pays. So
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I have a lot of feedback for this one, but I wanted to hear everybody else's thoughts
My
before
recommendation- Oh, sorry. I think it lagged out for a second.
So, this spot right here is right beside Grigsby's, in Greenfield. And if you go by Grigsby's on a Thursday evening, I mean, there's about 11 Teslas out there. And so I think that conventional side of this, and obviously I own a business in town that benefits from combustion engine vehicles, right? So, but I drive a Tesla, so they're kind of counterproductive to each other, but I get both sides. So there are more and more electric vehicles coming. And one thing that was very surprising to me when I purchased Fortville tire was the amount of business we get from Fishers and Geist. And I mean, the zip codes on these credit cards are, there's a lot from over there. And what I mean by that is that, there's a lot of electric vehicles that are in Fishers and Geist that are coming down here for not only service at our store, but our restaurants and patroning our dining establishments. As a Tesla driver too, I will tell you that I have personally, and I have seen a handful of times where in these spots, specifically in Greenfield, they are user pay. They are subscription based. And I've never used them. Now, do I park in those spots for upfront parking? 500% I do, right? And I'm on the record saying that. So I think obviously I'm a vocal proponent of charging stations, because especially where our local businesses are making money from, and which is kind of the point of our board here, by that traffic coming from Fishers and Geist. But I think the first thing we need to address is who's going to be the payee for these, because it's going to be a free spot if it's a paid for by
Right.
that person.
And I get that, and I absolutely see a benefit of having these eventually. My take on it is that is not the place for him in the prime parking spot of town, and we are already limited in parking. And I guess, and I don't have an electric vehicle because I'm old and I don't want one, but we have to adapt to the future as it comes to Fortville. It's already here, but these are things that at some point we do have to adapt and accept in our community. I don't like the idea because we don't have all the information. For one, we can't designate as a group where that parking place is. We can't give away those parking places. That's not in our purview. So from my perspective, this should have gone to the council first to say, can we have 2 spots? Where are we going to put them? And then if the town can't afford it, then can the RDC help out? That would be my perceived path, and maybe that's wrong, but that's what I would see. But I see the benefit. I don't see it right now.
Another question that I would have would be, these are destination chargers. So there's 2 types of chargers. You've got your superchargers that are 72 or 150 kilowatts that are charging 300-400 miles an hour. And you've got these that are destination chargers. So you're going to get maybe, Katie, what's the kilowatts on these? Sorry if I missed it.
Oh, no, you're fine. There's 7.2 kilowatts per port.
So you're going to get about what, 30 miles an hour?
Yeah, 25 to 30, just kind of depending on the battery.
So you're looking at, somebody's got to be a tax man for a couple of hours to get 60 miles of charge. So I would turn to staff and say, have we entertained any kind of opportunity for superchargers, or has it only been destination chargers that have been brought to us?
Well, I would say that I am no expert on charging, and I've had to do some research on it. At least from a staff perspective, we're totally open. If the RDC or council, however you want to do it, is open to the idea, we can look at different charging capabilities. What I do know is that, if I recall correctly, that this particular unit was very similar to what they did in Greenfield, if not the same. And it also was kind of the mid-range standard, so to speak, that you'd see in a lot of these public parking lots across the country. wasn't exactly the fastest and it wasn't the slowest, if I understood the technology correctly.
Sure.
The other thing that I would add too is, I understand the concerns about, that's a good point, about taking up some premium parking right off of Main Street. You know, if the powers that be wanted to have it maybe at the perimeter of the parking lot near Merrill,
Or over by
That's
Fortville Tire, there's that parking
it's another.
right across the street from your shop.
I'm not gonna be mad about that.
That's the point of that, Tanya, is
Public comment.
there needs to be more thought put into this, in my opinion. And let the public help us.
I don't, I would almost, and obviously I'm not on the town council, but I would think there might need to be a 2 or 3 person steering committee to kind of run this down, and because to Fritz's point, that public comments that he's made that, you know, parking, this all kind of gets lumped into that bigger parking picture too, and that to spend $16,000 on an electric charging station and then next year have a plan to go and redo parking, it's now we're gonna tear it up, we're gonna reappropriate it, we're gonna move it.
Well, now I've got a concern over the charging phase of it, because what you're saying, I understood that, but I didn't know how exactly it works.
Sure.
I mean, if we're gonna do it, do it right. Don't do it.
Well, it sounds like
half-assed.
it just gets them back to Fisher's,
Yeah, I mean,
like,
and doesn't the
Yep.
length of the charge, the destination of that charge also, it dependent on weather, the temperature and.
And that's short of a trip, it's not gonna make the difference. The reason they call them destination chargers versus superchargers is when you go a road trip, you know, you don't want to be at a charging spot for 5 hours to get X amount, right? So I went to Columbus last weekend, we stopped in Dayton, I had a full charge in 20 minutes. But those are 150 kilowatts of power that are putting into the vehicle. A destination charger is like what you have in your house, where you get to your destination and it charges overnight, so you have a full tank of charge the next morning to go and do your thing. But people aren't gonna be sleeping at Taxman.
we hope.
Well, you never know.
Yeah, I mean, then that's a problem for Chief Bratton over there.
Would you like
His
to
new
have a
AEDs,
motion?
but
Sure. Okay, I'll make a motion to table this. And in that motion, I would, authorize, Art, if he wants to be the spearhead this and bring further information back to us. Would you want to do that?
Secretary, now this, I'm not gonna second it, but I mean, it's,
Maybe amend that without that.
yeah,
Okay, I amend that to where, make a motion to table EV United ChargePoint CT 4,000 proposal.
I will second that one.
Do we want to say what we're tabling for, what we want, or are we just
I think
pushing
we-
it
I
off?
think we've made it clear.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
I think a larger picture for the town council to review.
Okay.
We have a
Well,
motion and a
yeah,
second.
with due respect, I'm not clear on what you're collectively looking at, so.
I think
There were a lot of different, I don't know if you want it to go to council or what it is that what the direction is.
I think it's council needs to figure out a parking strategy. Like a parking, like what they see parking being and amount, because
I'll relate it to the chief's proposal. He told us what he needed and where it's gonna go. We don't decide where it goes. So the proposal would be that we'll table this until they can come back to us with a plan that's been approved. And then if they need money, they can ask us for the money.
Got it.
Any other project,
Second.
you have to have all the
Sure.
details. You can't just say, we need 16 grand, we're gonna
Sure.
put it somewhere up here.
Sure.
second,
Not how it's gonna work. So we have a motion and a second.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Adam, are you good?
Yep, that's clear.
Alex, are we good? Look at that, thumbs up. A motion and a second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion carries. Review of financials. There's no questions. We'll look at the motion.
Make a motion to approve financials as presented.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Public comment. Public?
We do.
Moving on.
Second.
Staff comments.
We
Um,
do want to hear from the
none-
public.
None for me, unless you have any questions on anything.
Board
Just want to update for the record that Tony May, member of the RDC, is present for this meeting, virtual. Yep, note the minute.
Any other board comments?
No,
Looking for a motion to adjourn at 7.
I'll make a motion to adjourn at 7 o'clock.
You wait for it to turn.
Well, my watch says 7:01.
I have a motion.
Confusing.
Motion and a second, any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.